On behalf of Avery Dennison, I can tell you it's our pleasure to sponsor this morning's keynote speaker. Jim Cathcart is the founder and CEO of Cathcart Institute, a team of business advisors who work with owners, leaders, and executives in the areas of executive development and sales improvement. Jim is also co-founder of MentorU.com, a developer of private online learning centers. He's the author of 13 books, including 2 bestsellers, Relationship Selling and The Acorn Principle. In the year 2000, the ebook edition of The Acorn Principle was the #2 national bestseller out of 2,000 titles. In case you were wondering, Stephen King was #1. But there's another side of our speaker which is even more interesting. He's also been a nightclub singer, psychological researcher, bill collector, motorcycle salesman, banker, insurance agent, director of training, meeting planner, association executive, and an internet business owner. He may not be able to hold a job, but I hear he can really hold an audience. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming this morning's speaker, Jim Cathcart.
Good morning. What I'd like to talk with you about is relationship selling, but not just the concept of relationship selling, because that's pretty much what you do. That's the way you operate. That's the kind of people you are. Relationship selling for a new era. I wrote the book Relationship Selling back in 1986. And when I wrote it, it was considered kind of controversial. You know, people would say, well, wait a minute, Cathcart. Relationship selling? That's an oxymoron. Choose. Which word do you want, the relationship or the sale? Well, let me ask you. Which is more important, the relationship or the sale? How many would say the relationship? Okay, that's 2,705. All right? How many would say the sale? Okay, we've got a few bold hands up for that. All right. If you build a relationship and you don't get the sale, in round numbers, what's that worth to you? Okay, so a relationship without a sale is just a social acquaintance, right? What if you get the sale, but you didn't cultivate the relationship? How hard's the next call? Harder than the first call, right? Because people expect today that you're going to be the kind of a person, the kind of a professional, who they can relate to, who they can turn to you if they have a need. If something goes wrong, they've got something other than data or contracts to depend on. They've got a person they can connect with, right? So relationship selling is not separable, it's inseparable. The words go together, and they go together totally. So relationship selling involves first behaving as someone's business friend, and as you do that, whether you're getting the business or not, if you become a business friend to them, they start deferring to you for answers to questions or solutions to problems. Okay? So you become their subject expert. And after you've been their subject expert for a little while, you become their preferred source. That's the essence of relationship selling as I see it. Okay? So the question then becomes, when you're dealing with somebody, which are you perceived to be by them? A persuader who's trying to talk them into buying, or a partner who's helping them achieve the result they want? Well, the answer for almost any of us would be, well, you know, I approach it as a partner. Okay? But do they perceive it that you're being their partner? Big difference, right? It's not just what you intend, it's what they experience. I mean, give me an example. Here's where I discovered the whole concept of relationship selling in the first place. It was in Arkansas, where I grew up. Where's Lynn? Lynn Pettis. There you are. I grew up in Little Rock. By the way, yes, I've met him. Have to get this out of the way all the time, don't you? I'm the same age as Bill Clinton. We're both 55. We were both born in Arkansas at the same time. He was born in Hope. I was born in Little Rock. We grew up there at the same time. We know a lot of the same people. And if he'd made better life choices, he could be speaking to you right now. But I got the better job. Yes. But I grew up in Arkansas, and back in 1968, I was working for GMAC. I was a field representative. Translation, bill collector. Now, 1968, I was 22 years old. Look at this face. This is 55. Can you picture me at 22? 22, I looked about 4. I always had the rosy cheeks, you know, didn't have gray hair back then. I was kind of a baby face. And what I was doing for a living was repossessing log trucks in the hills of northern Arkansas, up around Mountain View. On a typical day, I'd drive down some deserted logging road. I'd get back in the woods. I'd find this big truck I'd been looking for. I'd park my company car, and I'd kind of swagger over the truck. I'd stand there, I'd look up at the cab, and this big hair-covered creature would come down out of it. I'd look him square in the chin, and I'd say, "I'm here to get your truck." And he'd say to me, "Boy, I don't know if you've noticed from down there, but we're alone in these woods." I'd say, "Yes, sir," and I'd go back to the company car. And they'd say, "Look, just go away and leave me alone." I'd say, "Hey, no worries, Mac, I'm out of here." And I'd start to drive off. I'd pause for a second and say, "Excuse me, but one last comment before I leave. I'm the last nice guy they plan to send. See ya." And they said, wait, whoa. What do you mean, last nice guy?" I said, "Well, after me, it gets kind of ugly. You know, they send these big bruisers with guns and sheriffs. Not a pretty sight." And they said, "Well, what are my options?" And I'd say, "Set the gun down." And, on 3 occasions, that literally was the case. And I'd show them what their options were. And 9 times out of 10, I'd either get a partial payment if they had it, or a payment. Or if they didn't have any money at all, what they would do is they'd drive the truck back to the dealership. I couldn't operate those things. And I'd give them a ride home. So I did okay as a bill collector. I didn't like the work, but I did all right. Now, the guy who took over after me didn't do as well. His name was Pete Smith. Now, Pete Smith made a serious tactical error. He went directly from the Marine Corps into bill collecting. How many Marines have we got in the room? Let me see the hands. Yeah, I used to ask how many ex-Marines we had, and then I found out it's a permanent condition. Once you're a Marine, Semper Fi, always faithful. Okay, so Pete comes out of the Marines. Now, Pete made the mistake of believing his drill sergeants. He thought he was invincible. So he goes out on the job with that attitude that he had in boot camp. And the first day on the job, well, not first day, first week on the job, he called on Monroe. Not Monroe, Monroe. Now, Monroe had been giving me partial payments all the time. Maybe he was always paying something, but he was always behind on his overall account. And I'd put up with it. Well, Pete decided it was time to clean up the account. So he goes out to Monroe's house, 7 o'clock at night in the dark, in the poor part of town, up around Newport, Arkansas. Goes out, bangs on the door, yells out some kind of a challenge, which Monroe accepted. You're ahead of me. Monroe stepped onto the front porch. Pete said something like, "All right, Smith's a name, credit's a game. I want your money, your wife, your car, or your life. You make the call." Those weren't his words, but I guarantee you that was the attitude. Monroe reduced him to a quivering lump of flesh. It took him about 15 seconds to beat Pete Smith to a pulp, and then he disappeared with the truck, never to be seen again. Pete, in the meantime, went into the Newport, Arkansas hospital for 14 days. That's a long stay, folks. And I looked at that and I thought, now that's the same guy who was giving me payments. What's the difference between Pete and me, other than current condition? Thought maybe it's education. So I went to our personnel file and I looked, same education. Okay, I bet it's training. So I checked our training records. We had both completed the company's 3-part course, which at that time was, these are your accounts, these are your business cards. Good luck. Well, it was dangerous work. What was the main difference between me and Pete? What do you think? Attitude, yeah. The way we looked at what we did. Point of view, frame of mind, attitude toward what we were doing. Pete went out there as a persuader to talk people into buying, more or less, cooperating, right? I knew if I tried that, I'd never have offspring, okay? So I figured it's going to be a lot more enlightened on my part to go out there as a partner in problem solving. So the way I approached people is I'd say, "Hi, I'm Jim Cathcart. I'm here from the company. It's my job to show you how to get us off your back." And when they were convinced I was sincere, when they could tell I wasn't playing a game with them, they'd open their homes, they'd offer me coffee, we'd sit down and solve the problem. See, the same thing's true for you and me. There's a principle here. It's a principle that applies to selling. It applies to managing people. Certainly applies to bill collecting. It applies to parenting, the way you raise your kids. You find that the most effective parents are the ones that are helping their children grow, not forcing them to behave in a particular pattern. Which is more important? To get your kids to complete their homework, or to cause your kids to love to learn? And what's the difference in the two? Get them to complete their homework, what do you get? Homework. What's that worth? Right? Get them to love to learn. Cultivate in your children an enjoyment of the learning process. You don't have to look for homework for the rest of their lives, because they will find a way to figure out what they need to know, because they love the experience of learning. Frame of mind or point of view is enormous. So you say to me, all right, well, I already go out there as a partner in problem solving. I already train my people when they contact the businesses that we do business with. I train them to approach it as a system seller, a problem solver. You know, go in there and look for a solution, not just peddle some goods. Okay, good. But do the customers get it that that's where you're coming from? See, what we've got to do is we've got to be sensitive to their mindset and notice throughout the sales dialogue, whether it's on the phone, through email, or face-to-face, we've got to notice whether they're perceiving us as one or the other. And then do the things that lower the tension, raise the trust, and lead to more sales. I've rewritten the book Relationship Selling. It'll come out in September. And I rewrote it as the 8 competencies of relationship selling, because I found that there are 8 sets of skills, not just a few skills, but 8 packages, each of which has a lot of skills in it, that constitute sales effectiveness in the whole concept of relationship selling. Think about your own strengths, yours as a person and yours as a company. Which of these skill sets are the strongest? Now, there's 8 of them up here. Preparing, that's sales readiness, being ready to do the job well even when the circumstances change. There's targeting the right people, not wasting time calling on the people that are less productive for you. Okay? There's connecting with the people you've targeted in such a way that they want to do more business with you, to talk with you. They want to open up and expose their needs so that you can prescribe the right solution. There's assessing both the personal needs and the situational needs, not just prescribing technically the products they need, okay, but also understanding why they need them and how they feel about that, okay. There's solving the main problem, and that's a whole set of skills around finding, highlighting, and solving the main problem that they're concerned about. Then there's assuring that they make a commitment to it, that you're actually what we used to call closing the sale, which is actually confirming the sale and opening the flow of services and goods, right? So closing, really an inappropriate choice of words. But it's commitment, and that's a set of skills. Then there's assuring that they stay satisfied after you're not in touch with them that week. After the phone call's over, after the delivery, assuring that they stay satisfied. That's a whole set of delivery and service skills. And then finally, there's managing yourselves for improved sales performance, which is everything from tracking your own numbers to keeping yourself motivated to maintaining the right frame of mind among your team to keep them thinking in terms of service and looking for needs and opportunities. So there's 8 of them up there. Which of the 8 are the strongest in your organization? Choose the top 2. Top 2 strongest in your own organization. How many of you would put the preparation and sales readiness in your top 2? Could I see your hands? Okay. How many would put targeting the right prospects or customers in your top 2? Okay. How many of you aren't going to raise your hand no matter what I ask next? Okay. I just want to see who I'm working with here. All right. Connecting, top 2. Good. That went up a lot. All right. Assessing the needs, top 2. Good at assessing the needs. All right. Solving, top 2. Commit, top 2. Good. All right. Assuring satisfaction. And finally, managing yourselves for improved sales, top 2. Now, whichever are your top 2 strongest automatically exposes what the 6 are that are not your top 2. You already know what your homework is. Here's one way to look at it. Put it on a wheel like this with the dot in the center being 0 and the outer perimeter being 10, and each one of these is a rating scale. And sometime when you've got a few free moments to think about this, or maybe while you're here, do this little assessment gram, I don't know what you'd call the thing, evaluation wheel, and just put a little dot on each line between 0 and 10 as to where you feel you currently are as an organization in the strength in that particular sales competency. And then connect the dots within the circle and see what kind of shape you come up with. And I'll bet you it's not a circle. What do you bet? What that tells you is which areas need a little more emphasis, more attention, which areas need some more training, which areas need some more resources maybe to compensate for an ongoing shortage in that area. So I hope that's a helpful tool, something you can use. And watch the bookstores in the fall for the 8 competencies of relationships. No, don't watch the bookstores. Buy the book. Boxes of them. Give them to everybody. Okay. Here are some assumptions I'm working on today. First assumption, if people continue to think as they do today, they will continue to perform as they do today. Could I get an amen to that one? Thank you. If we don't change people's thinking, we will not change their performance. Okay. Second assumption. When people are not held accountable, performance lapses are commonplace. Accountability is what drives society. It's what makes an organization or a family or a community work. Without accountability, somebody's pulling the wagon while somebody else is kicking back and taking a free ride. Okay? So we've got to have accountability, but we've got to change people's thinking if we want to change their performance. Likewise, if people can't see tomorrow clearly, they assume tomorrow is going to be like today or like yesterday. So part of our job as leaders, part of our job as the people who go to the conferences, the people who soak up this new information, the people who convert the ideas from the main platforms and the breakout sessions into practical application dialogue in the hallways afterwards, we need to help other people see what's possible. We need to paint some pictures of what tomorrow can be. Because if it continues to look like it used to look, nobody's going to change their behavior. And if nobody changes their behavior, no, it doesn't stay the same. We fall behind. Agreed? Got to constantly grow and change. So what's coming? I don't know. I know some things, and you know some things. You know, we know that e-commerce is enormous, but it's minuscule compared to what it will soon be. We know that skills that we used to deny that we were going to need, you know, like email and things like that, I don't need to fool with that. I've got people that do that. Remember those days? Yeah, we're talking way back in like, I don't know, 99. You know, we're finding that, of course, we've got to have new skills. Sure, technology's getting easier. Technology's getting more user-friendly. But at the same time, if we're not constantly learning and growing, we're quickly becoming obsolete. So as we come to the conferences like this, as we go online, we do research, we talk with our colleagues, and we find out what's coming, we need to ask ourselves further, what do we need to do to be ready for what's coming? Because if you're not ready for it when it gets here, guess what? It's not your opportunity. It's somebody else's. Ooh, a little disturbing thought, huh? So if you want to know more, start to notice more. And start noticing more in a lot of areas. Look outside your own field. I want to run through a little scenario with you here. This is a model where I just talk about how long it took various technologies, most of which you deal with on a day-to-day basis, how long it took these technologies to reach 30% market adoption, saturation point, beyond which it starts to just flash into everybody's world. Okay? For the telephone, it took 38 years for 30% of the market to adopt it. 38 years. The television took 17. Personal computers, 13 years. Scanning technology, over 10 years. Wireless phones, 10 years. Remember when it was so fun, so clever to call somebody from their front porch and tell them to answer the doorbell and then you rang it? Wow. Okay. We've come a long way. Hey, put it on mute, will you? Okay. We've come a long way. The Internet took 7 years. Now, has anybody picked up a trend yet? What's next? I don't know. How long is it going to take to be adopted? Less than... Exactly. See, what happens is society advances based on two things, based on the solutions we produce and on the connections we sustain. So what we've got to do is we've got to focus on the servers and make sure that the CBLF servers are right. If we're going to have all this technology and it's all changing and evolving, if we don't take care of this part, we've got a serious problem. At this point, I usually entertain questions. Would there be any questions at this point? So what is a CBLF server? That would be a carbon-based life form. You and me. It's always the human factor that determines whether it's going to work, isn't it? Okay. So what matters most in all this? Well, people matter, but so do things. Look at this. Systems, information, cost, of course. Values matter. Lots of things, relationships, leadership, sure. And you matter. It depends when you ask the question what the answer really is. Someone says, what matters most? Well, if you're doing a cost analysis, cost matter most, right? If it's tax time, accuracy would be good, okay? There's not a thing up here that doesn't matter. It's just that they take their own turns being in number one position. So what matters most? All these things matter most, sometimes. But people, including you, that's what packages all of it. These are not in any particular priority order. They're just up there because that's the way they came out when I typed it in, right? So if all these things matter, then we've got to make sure that we don't neglect any of these. I said a while ago that society advances based on the solutions that we produce, the kind of products and services, and the connections we sustain. So what we've got to have is pH balance. pH, profits high. pH, people happy. Does that work for you? Okay. Now, if you've got really high profits and your people are not happy, what's coming? That's right. Okay. So what if you make your people really, really happy, but you never get your profits up again? Become a church, you get a tax advantage. Okay. Maybe you just ought to work on both sides, huh? So it's kind of like this technology. I've got a piece of business technology over here I want to show you. It's sort of like this. Remember slinkies? Actually, it's not technically a slinky, but it's a coil spring, and the most popular brand is called Slinky. Which side makes it work? Yeah. I mean, it's a dumb question, isn't it? Okay. So I want you to just watch the Slinky for a second. And think of the Slinky as representing profits and people, the two primary issues in a business, okay? Profits, which is the product side, which is the system side, and all the, the technical part. And people, the human side, the interaction, the relationships, the sales, and so forth. Okay? How much action does it take on my part to bring this thing to life? Notice how much actual force I have to put into it. All I'm doing is just barely moving my fingers. And yet this thing's going back and forth just fine. But if I overemphasize one side, all of a sudden it stops. And it doesn't matter which side I overemphasize. So I've got to pay attention to both. I can't neglect either. But if I overemphasize one, then I end up with a really bizarre outcome. Same thing's true in your world. Okay? And that's true for businesses that are pretty large. And that's true for tiny little operations as well. The principles transfer. They're absolutely the same across the board. So here's the leader's dilemma. Okay, a person's sitting there and they say, okay, I run my own company. I got my people. I've got all my systems in place. But Jim, you're recommending I spend an awful lot of time with the people side of it. What if I put all this energy into training my people and then they leave? Valid concern. Here's a more important concern, though. What if you don't and they stay? Shudder at the thought, huh? It's not optional. I mean, we don't have the option of not training our people, of not guiding their thinking and developing the right frame of mind toward all this. It's part and parcel of leadership. It's what comes from being in a position where you can make a difference. It's a basic responsibility. But there are vital relationships we have to lead people into. For example, if the person doesn't feel connected to the organization, they always will seem like an outsider, even if they've been there 30 years. If it were possible to live that long, and it may be, that you could have been with S.P. Richards from 1848 to now, if you didn't feel a connection with the vision, the values, the beliefs of this organization, even today, after all that time, you'd still feel like an outsider, someone that didn't belong. But if you do embrace what the organization's about, you feel like family the first day. So that's one of our primary roles, is we've got to get people to embrace the organization itself, to understand it and care about it and believe in it, or go somewhere else if they don't. Okay? Second thing is we've got to make sure they understand in the overall scheme of things what's their part. Where do they fit in this matrix? They need to see how when they produce a result and it goes to the next level, what do those people do with it and how do they feel about the way they get it? And when they get something from someone else, where are they in the food chain? And how does it go back upstream, right? Also, they need to understand the technology they're dealing with and understand more than just the operation of it. They need to understand a little bit of the why that makes it that way, so they can help make it even better. Okay? If a person doesn't have a sense of purpose in what they do, they won't add much value to what they do. Would you agree with that? If you don't find much purpose in what you do, you won't add much value to what you do. Quick story. Years ago, I was in Atlanta in the airport, and I was in the food court. And I was standing there with my little coffee and muffin, and I was just watching all the people. It was really, really crowded. It was like out in the foyer this morning, people everywhere, thousands and thousands of them. And I chose not to fight for a table, so I just stood back and had my little snack. And I noticed a busboy who's bussing tables, but he looks like this. Slumped shoulders, long droopy face, kind of dragging his feet. And he goes from table to table, and he picks up a tray, and he gets the trash, and he's making eye contact with nobody. Goes over, he throws away the trash, takes his rag, goes to another table. I'm getting depressed watching this guy. I'm thinking, somebody ought to do something. So finally I finished my meal and I threw away the trash. I went over and I just tapped him on the shoulder. He recoiled. I think he thought he was going to get in trouble. I said, "Excuse me." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "What you're doing sure makes a difference here." He said, "No, sir, I did." Huh? I said, "What you're doing sure makes a difference here." I said, "Look at this place. It's jam-packed with people. If you weren't cleaning these tables, in 5 minutes there'd be trash everywhere. The place would be unsanitary, unpleasant. People wouldn't come. What you're doing matters. I just wanted to say thanks for doing it. See ya. Now, I'm walking off. He's in shock. But in the time it took me to walk about 10 feet, when I glanced back, I swear he had grown 6 inches. He didn't become serviceman. Hey, good morning, welcome to the food court. Boy, it looks like you could use one of our bran muffins. Let me help you out here. You know, nothing like that went on. All that happened is he went from depressed to neutral. Neutral. But what do you bet for the balance of his shift? He did his work a little bit better. Fair assumption? Okay. What do you bet for the balance of his shift? He felt better about himself and handled problems a little more smoothly. Okay. What had I done? Complimented him. I acknowledged him. A guy in Seattle said, Jim, you gave him back his dignity. Ooh, that's kind of lofty. I don't know that I did that, but here's what I did do. I pointed out the direct connection between his performance and the effect it had on other people. I pointed out the direct connection between his performance and the effect it had on other people. He knew about that, but he hadn't thought about that. He didn't think about it very often at all, I'll bet. How many times do your people think about it? How many times do you think about it in a given day? You say, well, given, that's the point, Jim. It's a given. Hey, when it's a given like that, I'll guarantee you it's not getting much mental energy or much emotional investment. If we don't consciously and intentionally remember and notice the purpose of what we're doing, then we tend to become bureaucratic and just get caught up in the process of what we're doing. When people don't see much purpose in what they do, they won't bring much value to what they do. It matters. It matters. Person to person. How many of you have ever seen your business suffer because two of the people in it didn't deal with each other very effectively? Get them up. Yeah, exactly. Everyone in the room. People problems are an enormous business expense. So, is it just up to you just slap them around and say, grow up? I don't think so. I think it's a skill thing, it's an attitude thing, it's an inspiration thing. We need to inspire them. We need to lead them in such a way that they feel the need or the impetus to rise above that and to acquire the skills for resolving personal conflict. And also, person to self. If a person doesn't feel good about him or herself, it will show up in their work. Agreed? Absolutely. So it really pays to support and encourage personal development through your organization. We used to say, nah, that's their personal problem. You know, that's something, that's not job related. The heck it's not. It shows up on the job. That's job related. We're talking dollars here, right? Okay? So there are a lot of vital relationships that expand our thinking about what does it mean to be a leader, be a manager, be a director of sales, be a vice president of an organization. There's a lot to it. Organizational DNA, the genetic code of your organization, is contained in what you believe in, care about, stand for, and how you express yourself to the community. And that's the first thing people have to embrace in order to really be a part of the organization itself. I'm going to show you a little grid here that takes the two things, awareness, how you think, and performance, what you do. It's kind of fun, standing in front of a race car like this and saying the word performance, I feel like kneeling. That's nice. By the way, I really appreciate the fact that you chose silver cars to give away in the year that's the 25th year, silver anniversary of Cathcart Institute. I thought that was very thoughtful of you. Thank you. Years ago, when my marriage 25th came about, my wife Paula said, Jim, you know, our 25th is coming up. And I said, yeah, I know. That's our silver anniversary. She said, no, it's not. I said, yes, it's our silver anniversary. She said, no, it's our diamond anniversary. I said, you're right. I said, do you want to specify shape or just size? She said, size will do. Supported by baguettes. And she described what she was looking for and gave me time to save up for it, thank heavens. She said, by the way, what do you want? And I said, just where you get your diamond. And then we got it, and I said, all right, your turn. I want you on the back seat of my motorcycle as I tour the Alps for 16 days, 3,000 miles. She said, done. Most romantic experience we ever had. Just riding through those mountain passes and by the little villages, day after day in Austria, Switzerland, Germany, France. Oh, man. So we did it again for our 30th. A few years will be our 35th. I think we'll do it again. Boy, ain't life grand. I'll tell you what. Awareness and performance. How you think and what you do equals mastery. If you put it on a grid, it looks like this. The two dimensions, how you think, awareness. How you do, that's performance. Awareness ranges from ignorance to enlightenment. And if you look at that, low awareness, person doesn't know much about what they're doing. They tend to focus only on the process, just the details, the steps. They become very rigid on process, okay? But the people who really think about it are purpose-driven. They're doing what they're doing because it matters that they do it that way. The process matters only because the purpose exists. Without the purpose, the process is just bureaucracy, as I said a while ago. Okay? So how do you get people to not be so process-focused? Talk about the reasons. Talk about the purpose. Tell the stories within your own organization of how you're impacting the customers. Because if you just hear the stories and get the testimonials from time to time, but you don't wave those flags, you don't run them up the flagpole and let everybody hear about them, they won't think about them. And if it's not in the front of your mind, it's not in the front of your performance either. Purpose. Performance. Most people only do what's required. They do. They've got no reason to do more than that, most people. So they just do what's required. But a few people are exceptional. They step beyond the requirements and do more than they have to. Now, we created through this 4 quadrants within this grid. Low awareness and low performance, that's process-driven, doing only what's required. Okay? High awareness, low performance, that's purpose-driven, but still just doing what's required. High performance, low awareness, don't think about it much, but do a lot of work, not much thought. Okay? And then high awareness, high performance, upper right-hand quadrant. Here's what the names of them are. Low awareness, low performance, I call the passenger. They're just along for the ride. Now, there's a passenger in your organization, or a passenger, if you're thinking about this in a sales context, a customer that's buying from you, low awareness, low performance, not acting on it, not thinking about it much. Do they need education to raise their awareness or motivation to raise their performance? Yes. They need both, right? Okay? A person who's a critic, someone who's high in awareness but low in performance. They talk a great game, but they become what Brian Tracy told me is an articulate incompetent. Intellectually arrogant. Okay? Do they need more awareness to make them more effective? Heck no. They need more motivation, more behavior, more performance. Okay? So you can look at this and look at the person you're dealing with and know pretty quickly whether you need to focus on action, which would be a motivation issue, or focus on understanding, which would be an information issue. High action, low thinking, that's the competitor. The competitor doesn't need more motivation, they need more education, information. And the leader, whether they're in a leadership position or not, I mean, they don't have to have anybody answering to them but themselves. To be a leader requires high awareness and high performance. With them, you don't need information or motivation to get them going. You just need to point them right and get the heck out of the way. Now, is that something you can use? Okay. The AP grid. So the world's changing more than you are. Really is. More than I am as well. So in what ways are you currently obsolete? More than you know. Same's true for me. All of us are more obsolete than we ever realized. Let me share with you something to kind of put that in context. This is a little thing that comes out each fall from Beloit College in Wisconsin, maybe one of your customers. Beloit College sends out what they call the mindset list, and they send it to their faculty. And they say, folks, this describes how the incoming freshman class this year thinks about and sees the world. Compare it to how you see the world. The incoming freshman class this September was born in 1984. To them, an IBM Selectric is an antique. Thongs are not worn on the foot. There's always been Diet Coke. Adults have always been, it's always been impossible for them to open Tylenol. To them, one earring on a man indicates he's probably pretty conservative. Boeing has not built the 727 during their lifetime. Did you fly one? The Colts have always been in Indianapolis. Oh, sorry, Baltimore. Volkswagen Beetles have always had front engines. Ron Howard, who's that? A balding older film director. Not Opie. Hey, don't have a clue what carbon paper is. Now, they have come up with a pretty creative definition for CC, courtesy copy. That's pretty good, I thought. Okay. Oprah's always been a national institution. Jay Leno's always been on The Tonight Show. They don't remember the Reagan era. Atari is before their lifetime. You say to them, you sound like a broken record. They say, what's a record? Honest to God. They've never heard of an 8-track. Oh, and they've certainly never seen a TV with just 13 channels. And they say, Grandpa, no kidding? You used to walk to the television? Dude. You talk about VCRs, and they say VCR. Oh, yeah, that's like Grandma's got a VCR. What's beta? What is that? Never heard the statement, where's the beef? Oh, man. Michael Jackson's always looked like a white woman. And the world's a very different thing to them than it is to us. Man, I tell you, in how many ways are we obsolete? A lot, right? A lot. Man. And so what we've got to do is constantly notice more. Intentionally pay attention to things that we weren't going to pay attention to in the first place. Like Buckminster Fuller, the man who developed the geodesic dome, considered to be the Leonardo da Vinci, the great mind of the 20th century. He used to go to a newsstand and buy whatever was in the right-hand corner, whatever magazine was up there, if it was Trucking Weekly, or if it was Waterbed World, or if it was Cosmetic Techniques for the New Age, or whatever, he would buy it. And he would read something in which he was not interested, intentionally, just to stretch his perspective and get a different take on things. Pretty good exercise. We've got to notice more. We've got to constantly pay attention. Because, see, we're shifting from the industrial era, not to the information age, but the eco-technology era, where we realize the world's alive. That this organization and your own companies are living systems. So it's not mechanisms, they're organisms. They behave differently, and the industrial metaphors just don't cut it. Right? 9 to 5, forget that. We want access whenever we feel the need for access, 24/7. Lifetime learning, perpetual education is the deal. Eye contact is being supplemented by the need for skills in e-contact. How do you build trust when all you can convey is a digit? Okay? IQ is being supplemented by EQ, emotional intelligence, as one of the primary skills required for success. Always was, we just now started to notice that. And knowledge is no longer seen as power. Knowledge is universal. Access to the knowledge gives you power. Persuasion and partnering we talked about as the way people sell. Partnering is the name of the game today. You can't keep up, but you've got to stay in the game. And do it yourself is no longer the predominant model. It's do it together. It's collaboration. That's the way we work the world. And institutions don't control the information anymore. So who's in charge? Individuals. When the individuals rule, self-leadership is king. Here's a quote from Bill Clinton. Now, I got this quote directly in person in the White House in 1994. I was there for a tour with a small group. It was a group of past presidents of the National Speakers Association. By the way, yesterday I was in Orlando at the National Speakers Convention, and your upcoming speaker, Tom Winninger, who is a very close friend of mine and also a past president of that group, was on the program and blew them away. You are in for such a treat. Be sure and be in the room when Tom Winninger speaks here. But we were touring the White House with our spouses, and there were about 20 of us, because our convention was in D.C. that year. And at the end of our tour, President Clinton heard we were there, and he came out to see us. Now, no matter how you vote, to meet the President of the United States in the White House, for heaven's sakes, that's a pretty big deal. Would you agree with that? Certainly it was a big deal for me, you know, coming from Little Rock. So we met the President, chatted with him. Someone said, "We're speakers, Mr. President," but then again, so are you. He looked directly at me. He said, "Half my job's keeping people in the right frame of mind." I said, "That's a keeper." But when you think about it, isn't half your job keeping people in the right frame of mind? Really? Yeah. A big portion of everything we do involves managing point of view. A big portion of what we do involves managing point of view. And if you can't get someone to think of you as a resource that's part of their family, their network, then they'll see you as a persuader and they'll resist and they won't share enough information for you to accurately prescribe how you really could make a difference. Tom Winninger may share with you the story that he was sharing with me down in Florida, where he talks about a person who was selling off his products to him and approached it as selling a system, not just fulfilling some orders. Talked about the bigger reasons behind things. So half of what we do involves managing point of view. Here's a point of view that's important. Dan Burris, he's also a speaker who was there. Dan is a futurist, a technological researcher. He says it's a mistake to assume people know what they want, because if they don't know what's possible, they're going to ask for too little. Isn't that the truth? Part of what we do is painting pictures of what's possible, showing people the possibilities. And I think that's really an important element in all that. So what does the customer experience? They experience people. They experience processes that we go through in dealing with people. They experience the products or services that they get from us. How many of those three can you control on some level? Yeah, three. You are the people. You implement the processes. You represent the products. You choose which ones you're going to focus on. Okay? But most of all, what people experience is the feelings that they have from doing business with you and me. I want to talk about a concept that I call upserving, and it's contrasted with upselling. Upselling is about getting someone to buy more. Upserving, on the other hand, is about getting someone to feel more satisfied. Okay? So let me put this in context. It's not focusing on your needs to sell. It's focusing on their needs as the buyer. And the emphasis is not to get them to increase the size of the order. That may happen. But the emphasis is on getting them to feel more satisfied that they're your customer. Okay? Here's how I saw that in action years ago. 1975, I moved from Little Rock to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Lived in Tulsa for 6 years. When I moved there, the first thing I wanted to do on getting to Tulsa was reestablish my day-to-day routine. And for me, the day-to-day routine always begins with me going to breakfast by myself. I take my writing pad, I take a pen, and I sit there by myself and I let my mind do whatever it wants to do that morning. I've done that for 30-some-odd years, and it's served me very well. So I got to Tulsa and I looked around for my breakfast restaurant. And Sure enough, about a mile from the new office, there was the symbol of it. Sticking up through the trees. Well, I had pretty simple taste at the time, but there are the golden arches. And I pulled over into the parking lot that day. It was a slow morning. I walked into the McDonald's, and behind the counter were two women, a 20-year-old and a teenager. And as I approached the counter, the 20-year-old said, "Good morning, what's your name?" In a McDonald's. I said, she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "You just asked my name." She said, "Question was too hard?" No. She said, "Well, what is it and what'll you have?" I said, "It's Jim Cathcart, and I'll have an Egg McMuffin and coffee." She said, "Fine, that'll cost $1.41. So I paid. I started to walk off with my breakfast, and the teenager turned to the 20-year-old. She said, "Hey, Grandma, where are the coffee cups?" I said, "There is no way on earth you are a grandmother." She said, "No, but that's my nickname. They call me Grandma because I'm kind of the mother hen around here. I take care of things." And I said, "Well, what do you like to be called?" She said, "You can call me Grandma. My name's Marilyn." I said, "Okay, Grandma." You know, and I went on and I ate my breakfast. Now, I had a good time that morning. I came back the next day, and this became my regular place. Every morning for the first several, she asked my name. Then she started to remember it, and then she realized I was always ordering the same thing, always an Egg McMuffin and coffee. Always cost $1.41. So it was a regular routine, and I enjoyed the routine. Well, one morning I pulled into the parking lot, and I looked up and said, "Uh-oh. What do you think I saw?" A bus? Oh, no. Two buses. Now, two buses empty in a McDonald's parking lot equals what in a McDonald's lobby? Chaos. I figure, okay, 45 people per bus, we got 90 head ready to graze in the lobby of this McDonald's. That's okay, it's my place, I'm going in. So I parked my car, I walked over, squeezed into this place. Got in there, looked for the line that was moving fastest, the one that'll stop if you get in it. It stopped. Then I heard my name, Mr. Cathcart. Mr. Cathcart. And I look up at the front, it's Grandma, Marilyn. Yes. She said, "Your breakfast is ready." Excuse me. Coming through. My breakfast is ready. Reached for my $1.41. She said, "Nah, it's on the house." How's it going there? Yo. Went into that dining room and dined, if that's possible, on an Egg McMuffin. Now, what do you think at that moment? Do you figure the odds were pretty good I might come back? What would you say? Pretty good, extremely good, or a slam dunk certainty? Slam dunk. What am I coming back for? The cuisine? No? Not the product? The price? That was a good price. What would I come back for? Yeah, Grandma, for the way she made me. The way she made me feel. With one simple, seemingly trivial gesture, she bought 6 years of customer loyalty. I'd bring business friends for lunch. I don't even like their lunch. They would say, "There? It's special." It was for me. Now, I want you to stop and analyze this for a second. 6 years of customer loyalty from one simple gesture. What did it cost her to do the gesture? That was the gross cost. What was the net? What, 2 cents? You've eaten one of those. Huh? But we'll give her the benefit of the doubt. It was $1.41, okay? How much time do you think she committed to that transaction? 15 seconds. You know, she's serving the other people, sees me, gets down someone's order, gets an extra egg sandwich and coffee. "Mr. Cathcart, your breakfast is ready." "No, it's on the house." Goes on serving other people. Maybe 15 seconds. 15 seconds of her time, $1.41 gross revenue commitment, 6 years of customer loyalty, 27 years of free advertising. Now, we're talking ROI. 27 years of me telling that story and giving them free advertising? That ain't bad. So why'd she do it? She did it because it was in the training manual. Okay, she did it because they gave bonuses to people who did that. No. She did it because if she hadn't done that, somebody would have noticed, she'd have gotten in trouble. She did it. Why'd she do it? She wanted to. Now think about that. We're talking management strategy here. She did it because she wanted to? How are you going to manage wanted to? Half of what you do is managing point of view. Half the job is keeping people in the right frame of mind. When people don't see much purpose in what they're doing, they don't add much value to what they're doing. How do you get someone to step outside of only what's required and do something exceptional? You do it by raising their thinking to the level that they see the purpose of it all. They realize that the purpose of your business is to cause the other businesses you deal with to be better off because they know you, because they relate to you, because they connect with you. You're in it together. Society advances, your business advances, your personal career advances based on the solutions you produce and the connections you sustain. Relationship and selling comes as a package, inseparable. So what's the purpose of what you do? Let me offer a way of saying the answer, okay? To make life better for people. Could I get an amen for that one? Amen. Thank you very much. The purpose of what we do is to make life better for people, for heaven's sakes. And we need to remember that the way to do that is be the person you're capable of being. J.C. Penney years ago said, no one need live a minute longer as he is because the Creator endowed you with the ability to change yourself. Now, you can't change your nature, but you can certainly determine which parts of it you cultivate, right? Everyone's capable of excellence, magnificence in their own particular niche, but we've got to nurture our nature. And we ought to aim high, because the way we see the future unfolding determines what kind of qualities we develop in ourselves. The future you see defines the kind of person you'll end up being. So it matters what you dream about the future, and you control that dream. And aim high. Here's a quote from Earl Nightingale. Years ago, I heard Nightingale on the radio. And it was 1972, Little Rock, Arkansas. I was a government clerk working for the Housing Authority, $500 a month, had a new wife and baby at home, no college degree, no money in the bank, no connections in the community. In the next room, the radio's playing, and Earl Nightingale's fatherly voice comes on in that little 5-minute radio show that's kind of like Paul Harvey's. And he said, if you will spend 1 hour a day extra studying your field, within 5 years or less, you'll be a national expert. And I thought, an hour a day? I'm a government clerk. I got 8 hours a day. I can do this by Thursday. Then I had a new dilemma. What did I want to be an expert at? Well, it weren't urban renewal. And I thought, I want to do what the guy on the radio is doing. I want to help people grow. But I had two conditions that would tend to limit one's speaking career. I had never given a speech in my life, and I had nothing to say. Kind of keeps your fees modest, you know. But I thought, okay, I'll take him at his word. And I started spending an hour a day, sometimes 2 hours a day, studying the field of human development, reading the classic books like Think and Grow Rich by Norman Vincent Peale, Power of Positive Thinking, or Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Peale. You know, the classics like that. Then I started going to seminars, listening to records, and then later to tapes. And then next thing I knew, I was involved in the field of training. I was leading workshops. And in 1977, which was 5 years later, I went into my own business, June 16, 1977, as a speaker and trainer. And I've been doing that now for 25 years. been the president of my industry association, inducted in the Speaker Hall of Fame, all the things that speakers dream about doing. Wow! To know that that's possible for someone who starts off sitting there as a $500 a month clerk with no assets on their side. Think about what's possible when you start at your level. You're already leaders. You already know the fundamentals. You already know the people. You've got the resource. You're surrounded with connections. And you're sitting here in the midst of an information resource of massive proportions. If you've spent 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes, you could find that. 15 minutes a day studying just the part of this that you love the most. I'll bet in 3 years or less you'd be a national expert on that. And within 5 years, a global expert on that particular niche. So ask yourself every day, how would the person I'd like to be, the oak, do the work I'm about to do as an acorn? Acorns that think like acorns stay acorns or become squirrel food. Acorns that think like oaks spawn generations of future acorns. How would the person I'd like to be do the thing I'm about to do? Here's a graphic that's on my website. The website's my name, cathcart.com. Go to the website, scroll down to this graphic, and you can click on that and download it as wallpaper in your computer or send it to yourself free as a postcard, electronic postcard, and you can save it that way. You can even pass it on to other people if you like. So if that question is inspiring to you, capture it like that. If you want it on a mouse pad, you can buy it there on the website. As a matter of fact, the website looks like this, cathcart.com. If you're interested in the books and the other learning materials, you can acquire those from there, because a lot of times bookstores don't inventory them at the right level to meet this enormous demand that I generate. But on that, there are many things, including some articles. There are 3 in particular that I think you'd enjoy. Just go to the articles portion on the left-hand side of that little menu bar and click on articles, and you'll see these. And by the way, you remember the Beloit College thing, the mindset list? That's on there. Free. Just download it. And download these articles. 15 ways to grow your business, 11 ways to expand your life, 20 ways to increase your sales. So maybe those will give you some resources to add to all of this so that you practice relationship selling not just at the beginning of this new era, but that you become the model of relationship selling that others aspire to be. Thank you for this time. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Woo! My. Thank you.
Very well.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you.